4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. At first, I would like to excuse myself for being so late in answering to you, Mr. Grobman. The fact was I don't have a tape recorder, a cassette. And to go and borrow one and get started, it's been very difficult. But I thank you for the phone call, and I hope this will be as thorough as I can. Questions. Where and when did you first encounter Jewish survivors of the Holocaust? First, my name, Rabbi Benjamin Joseph Elsant. In the Army, I was known as Elephant, E-L-E-F-A-N-T. Since then, I changed my name to Elsant. And I am still I'm with the Veterans Administration as a civilian chaplain, also with the Army, also with the 301st Civil Affairs Unit, which I am the chaplain. I am now a colonel. Well, during all this happened, I was a first lieutenant. Now, question number one, where and when did you first encounter Jewish survivors of the Holocaust? Now, where was in Bonn, Germany? When it was toward the end of the month of April 1945. It had to be then. It was the last week of the month of April, right. Now, we were brought in boxcars to Viviers, Belgium, and then we were transferred to trucks, because that's as far as the railroad went at that time, to Bonn, Germany, where we were put into bivouacs in housing that the civilians were asked to leave on Beethoven Street. At that time, as Jewish chaplain, I started to get involved in organizing Jewish services for the Shabbos. And before I came, they had already requisitioned a large Protestant church where we conducted Jewish services Shabbos Friday night. Friday night, during the service, two GIs came in with two women, and as the service began. And one of them recognized me, after which I recognized him. He was the best man to a wedding that I had performed in Benton Harbor, Michigan, a year or so previously. And he had found these two Jewish women in one of the large, extremely large concentration camps of the slave workers, all slave workers that were then in the millions in Germany. They were put into camps in order to keep them out of the army's way, really. And they were in tremendous camps. And he was a guard of the camp. And as Jewish men were wont to do then, he was wearing a mezuzah on his dog tags. One of these women, seeing him with the mezuzah, ventured to approach him. She was very frightened and worried, but she was going to take a chance. She asked him, "Are you Jewish?" And he said he was. And she says, "Well, I and my friend are also Jewish. We would like to speak to you, but don't tell anybody we're Jewish until you have heard our story." Their story was that they spent the years as slave workers. They were under the guise that they were Polish workers who were taken to Germany, these two women. They were both Jewish. They looked very, very Polish. And they lived throughout the war working as Polish women in Polish groups, and everyone thought they were Polish. And they asked the fellows that they were like to be saved from the camp they were in, which were mostly Poles. And the fellows, not knowing what to do, said they had to go to services Friday night. They got a hold of a Jeep. They picked up the two women, and they brought them to the services. The services were at night. And as the chaplain, it delved upon me to speak with them. And it was a very, very moving conversation. Namely, as I said, they were doing. And they were very bright and on the ball and concerned, nervously concerned people. And they said that throughout the time that they were masquerading as Poles, they made sure they were first to the Mass, and they sang the Mass the loudest. More people should know they were Polish. And this quotation I would like to add. She said, "Ich will nicht mehr Angela heißen, ich bin Beruche." I don't want to be called Angela anymore. I am Baruch. I am Jewish. And she wandered out of the camp, which was mostly Poles. And the camp was really a hellhole. There were murders there constantly among the freed workers, because there was tens and tens of thousands. And women were raped, and in some cases, heard of even a breast being cut off. And they knew where they were in, and they said, if they would find out that we were Jewish, we would not live a day there. Well, this was, services were toward evening, was at nightfall, American Army, where things close up, you don't know where to go, and there's patrols out and all. So I said to the men, you've been ladies, you've been there so long, can you make the masquerade for one night longer? Which they said they would, and I asked the men to bring them in the morning. Coming in the morning, it was Shabbos, I got busy to do whatever I could. I found out for the first time that we had what we call a G5. It seemed to be hastily thrown together. It had to do with refugees and deported people and all that. And I went to the major in charge, whose name I don't know. It was in Bonn, Germany. And I told him this situation. These people were in danger, and we have to do something for them. And I know it's quite a few people who are working in the kitchen and living in Bonn. I told the women, would they mind doing work in kitchen and live in Bonn? They thought this was a tremendous thing. So I suggested to him that he take him as kitchen help and put him in Bonn to work in the kitchen and all that. He's saying he was getting thousands of requests like this because the people working in the kitchen were close to food and close to taking food in the black market. Everybody wanted to work in American kitchens. And he says to me, I cannot understand why these people will be in danger from the Poles. They were both slaves under Hitler. We have redeemed and rescued both of them. They would be like brothers in arms, comrades who suffered the same thing. Then it took a lot of patience. I had more at that time and time to explain to him that it wasn't that way at all, that the Poles were basically anti-Semitic themselves, and the fears that these women had were real fears, and we must help them. And I just prevailed. I wouldn't take, as they say, a no for an answer. I talked this way and that way, and still being very skeptical, figuring this Jewish fellow's trying to get the Jews ahead. He get me off his neck. I was going to leave the office without not let those women go back. So he said, okay, took them in, signed them up, and assigned them to kitchens. And the war moving on, I moved on with them. So that was my first encounter. And that was my response. I was as specific where and when as possible. The Army unit, which I was involved in a period, and I helped those first survivors, were called the Advanced Sector Communications Zone. I was a replacement. Now, that experience that I had with the German Jewish after this initial encounter, I will go through them as much as I can. Surprising enough, while the armies were advancing in Europe, I got a call one night. They put us on boxcars. They were then going to Bonn and took us back to Paris, to Etoms, and put us in another Reppel depot there. And that's where the war ended. And from there, I was given assignment to go to Verdun. At the same time, on that same shipment, I remember, he was in Boston, what was his name? Klausner, Abraham Klausner. He was given an assignment to go to Munich. And we had a room together that night. They took part way, I forget where it was in Rouen or something. I went to Verdun, and he went to Munich. Of course, that was in May of 1945. And of course, he was a lot more involved than I was. Well, when I came to Verdun, right at the outset, I had a refugee problem. A refugee had returned from being cachet, hidden. And he had lived in France for 20, 30 years. His children were born in France and all that. But since he came from Poland originally, he was still called an étranger. He was a stranger. And in the interim, someone had taken over his bakery shop. And he was supposed to get his bakery shop back, and that's where I came in trying to help him. So I went to the mayor of the city, who was a socialist. And then I thought, well, socialists will be so happy to help people in need, people who are giving a rotten deal. And I found that my first coming in, I was young then, that socialists, like everybody else, they want to get the best they can for themselves. And hemmed and hawed and everything else. And I found out how, I don't know, someone told me, you have to bribe them. So I started bringing him cartons of cigarettes, and come back next, a few days later, with another carton, and things start to move. There was a third deputy mayor, Mr. Daltroff, who owned the biggest department store in Verdun. And I figured, well, he came back, I made him the third mayor, he was a real refugee, he was an old-time Jewish Frenchman. And I went to him, I found out immediately that, he wouldn't do a thing. He was, oh no, he can't do. I could do a lot better with the mayor. I never went back to him on that problem again. And I continued working on this thing, was given assurances that it would be taken care of and things were in the works. And the man himself was telling me things were moving nicely. Then, that being in Verdun, there was went down to the Street of the Jews, wherein at the end there was, in the cul-de-sac, there was the Jewish shul. Very substantially nice shul. It was all blown apart by the Germans before they left. It was quite in shambles. So we began about to getting chairs in it and getting furnishings and fixing the roof, which the French government assigned workers and money to fix the roof. And we got some German PWs to help in the cleaning up and renovating of the shul there, the Jewish shul. As a matter of fact, one of the men I brought in, he was a colonel, part of a 319th Evacuation Hospital, if I recall correctly. His name was Colonel Haas, H-A-A-S, or H-A-S-S, H-A-A-S, H-A-S-S. It's H-A-S-S, that's the way it was, you see. And he wrote an article later, I found out, about the work I had done in the B'nai B'rith magazine. And we had a Chanukah Sabayis, a dedication, and in doing so I found that there were 5 or 6 youngsters who had returned, whereupon I suggested and organized a Talmud Torah for them, which met 3 times a week. I became a teacher of the Talmud Torah. It was held in one of the apartments by the Daltroff department store, which he owned. He gave us a few rooms in that apartment. Some rooms also were held for chickens, because eggs were hard to get, and he had got himself chickens to lay the family eggs. And while I was teaching the Hebrew, the prayers, we were also getting crowed with chickens, and I hear the noise of the chickens were nearby. And some of them were his relatives and others, and all I had was the GI prayer books. Surprising enough, you can start teaching reading from that, accepting the vowels and the syllables, and sure enough, we were making progress. While I was, this was happening in May of 1945. While I was there, I got a letter from the person we rented from in Warren, Ohio, saying that his family was left there, and to look and to help them, and they were someplace. He gave me an address which I knew not where. So I went to the Colonel Allsfather, Lieutenant First General Hospital in Verdun, asking permission to go to this place. Sure enough, when they looked it up, they found out it was a suburb of Paris. I had just joined the outfit, and the war had just been over within the last 3-4 weeks. He said to me, the people who've been with him for months and years, they're all looking forward to go to Paris, and he can only send 2 a week or so, and he doesn't know how he could take care of me. And the name was Krulovitsky, and the man who asked me, his name was Kroll of Warren, Ohio. And sure enough, the second week, which we were able to go, my name was out there. And so I got on a Jeep. I got myself peanut butter and all the staples that I thought these poor people would need. And I got a Jeep and went to Bar-le-Duc, where I was going to pick up the train for Paris. I had orders to go to Rue Scribe and get myself a place to stay. As soon as I got on the plane, I met a group of refugees, about 3, 4, one woman with 2 nieces, another woman, and 2 men, and they saw I was a chaplain. They gathered around me, telling me their story, that they had gotten out of Germany, they were going to Paris, and they wanted to get in touch with their families in America to go to the United States, if I would help them. I said, yes, I will. We'll see what we can do. And as soon as we got to the place in Paris, we got on the phone, and then I called some kind of, I know French a slight word, je prends un petit peu français, s'il vous plaît. And I was able to contact one of the Jewish agencies, you see. And then I stayed with them. It was getting dark toward night, and sure enough, a man came out, took him in the car, and gave me an address, and off they went. And whereupon I went to the town, to Rue Scribe, and got myself a place for the night. The very next morning, I went to this place, and it was one of the concentration camps in France that had been taken over by Jewish people. There was these wooden bunks with straw, double bunks. I don't know if it was Drancy or not, the name's familiar, and they wanted to get out of there, and they did. And somehow we got together, and they were moved to Hotel Lutetia, and that's where they were staying, and they were getting decent food and decent rooms. It was crowded with hundreds of refugees. Meantime, they claimed they were Polish, Czech or Hungarian, one of the two, and they went to the consulate to get papers to go to America. Well, the Reds had taken over, but he was from the previous time. They had taken over in Czechoslovakia, but not in Paris. So it was the same deal. I started bringing him cartons of cigarettes, and he started getting them visas. And they were getting visas, and they got in touch with their people in America, and they're on their way back to America, and back in America, they gave me a call once or twice. They had relatives in Cleveland. After which, I called on a friend of mine, a chaplain, his name now. I called a friend of mine, Chaplain Rakowski, who came over with me on the same shipment from America. There were 15 or 16 Jewish chaplains on this shipment that left America on March 1944. He was a chaplain to a hospital there, and I called him. I moved my sleeping from the hotel they gave me to his hospital. I told him my mission was to find these people who were hidden from the Krulevitskys. I gave him the address. He found it out, took his Jeep because that's where he was, and I'm carrying my peanut butter and other staples of that type to I assume this family which was in dire need. And sure enough, we come there with a street that iron gates in front of it, as many sections are in Paris, and we went inside, and there was an empty store downstairs with steep stairs. Now upstairs was this family living, and it was the son and the daughter. And when they heard that we were Americans, came from his uncle and all that, they were really so glad to see us. It was about 3-4 in the afternoon, they were just having dinner then. And sure enough, I look at it. Entrees, goose livers and steak. It was a tremendous meal. And so I put down my peanut butter and staples in the corner. I didn't say one word to them. Eventually I gave them to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And I was with them. I heard their story. Their name was Krulevitsky. He was a son who didn't want to study, and his father came from Poland and opened up rags, industrial wiping cloths and rags and all that. He was in the rag business, a rag peddler. But he became, I saw the factory was just a tremendous yard with, just hundreds of thousands of pounds of secondhand clothing and rags, which he had young French girls who were, selecting them and distributing them in various barrels and grading them. And that was he did. He bought it, and he graded it, and he shipped it out. Well, he being a bum, because his father was rich, running around to the taverns and chasing the girls, and the taverns had a connection with the underground. And his father ran the business for a couple of years with the Nazis because they needed the work that he was doing. They wanted to supply them with rags, and he was doing very well and making good money. And the underground came and told him told the son, the Nazi we hear they're out to get him. Got to do something. So he went to his father and mother and says, we got to get this thing off from our name and all this. And that part they listened to him. They moved the business over to some of the members of the underground of Paris, you see, who took over the control of the business through, just gave it over to them. And they told the parents, now you come underground with us, we must disappear. And Vayismamo, like Lot's wife, they delayed. They'll go tomorrow, the next day. Well, the day or so before they were ready to go underground, Nazis came, took them out, and shot them. That was it. So he and his sister were left in Paris, throughout the world, being taken care of by people in the underground. No problem, he said. It food and everything. They ran the business. And the day after the war, they called him up, gave him a reckoning, took their percent for running it, and gave him back the business with the profits. And he showed me at Billings. It was just in the thousands and thousands and thousands of francs. And he was well off, and we were friends for some time. He had an apartment on Place d'Italie, I recall, Took him a little trouble getting it, because other Frenchmen in it, but he had no trouble because he was born in France, and after a while he was in it while I was still with him. And there was my involvement with another refugee. But he went underground, he got everything back, and was quite wealthy when he came out, having everything when everything was short. As a matter of fact, I said, what can I get for you? He says, please get me a pair of officer shoes, this officer pink material, and a bottle of gin, which I did. But it shows you what his needs were. And I wrote to his family telling them that the nephew and niece are doing very, very well. They were both unmarried. Now, and not youngsters, they were in the deep 20s, 30s. And now I took care of that family. I was back in Verdun. We moved to Rouen for a while, and they called city camps, and there was not much to do with the refugees there, except I did go to the shul in Rouen, and there was a rabbi, chaplain. He was a sheikhet, and the name will come to me. He gathered them together, had a beautiful service, and they were singing the Gunim. By the way, with Rakovsky, I remember when I first came on board, and I was an American in the Army, always ate kosher, always walked on Shabbos, didn't have no need to ride at all, and big transit services. And I walked to the hospital and all over it, Indian Town Gap and other places. But it so happened we went to the Queen Elizabeth or Queen Mary, the Queen Elizabeth, I think, on Shabbos morning itself at 6 o'clock in the morning, and knowing that, having brothers and sisters in New York, I remember the night before I stole out of the camp. Very simple, just went out with all the workers, and went and visited my brothers and sisters, and took the subway on Shabbos, but they knew what was going on, and said goodbye to them, and came back to the camp. They said I was detained for 2 hours because I had no right to be out of camp. I was back and I had to leave, and so they sent me back to my group that was going. So when I got aboard the Queen Elizabeth, first meal was we started out at 6 o'clock in the morning. We boarded maybe 12 at night. The next morning to eat, it was treif, didn't know what to do. Then by the second meal, I said, well, I got to eat treif. Rakovsky was with me, and I took some of the treif of meat. Well, treif, they served us like kings, and then in the big ballroom. And he says, no, he's not going to eat it. Well, when we were together in Paris, already went through the chow line, he was eating a treif of beef too, because otherwise there's nothing to eat. He said he was going to make it, and not. I waited a day. He waited about 3-4 weeks. And that's just a sideline, you see, how we kosher people. Well, this fellow established a kosher kitchen, and he did it all over the army. And that was his thing. And he was a sheikhet, and he had things going there in Rouen. It was a very beautiful situation. Hirsch Levazer was his name. And then from Rouen, we went down to Marseille on the way to Japan. Got there, the war was over in Europe, the war was over in Japan about, and they kept us for a while, and then I got to know Chaplain Kurtzer was there, and another chaplain, he was up here in California, in that place where they have all the lettuce, you see, next to Fort Ord. And Hasselkorn. And I got to see the camps around there, and my only contact was as I went to visit and talk to people. This was the people in Aliyah Bet trying to go to Israel already, coming there in camps. And while I was there, they discovered one of the men who was one of the commandos, Sonderkommandos. It was a big to-do. They wanted to kill him right there on the spot, and some of the Jewish people there saved him to see that he gets a fair hearing. And had a big bonfire, and I talked with the people, gave them encouragement, and there was great zeal. Whereupon I was sent up to Paris from Paris to Brussels. In Brussels, I visited a few orphanages being established for Jewish people, bringing them small things. And I was sent to Le Havre. When I was at Le Havre, wait a second. When I was in Rouen, I was sent to 168th General Hospital. From there I went to 168th General Hospital in Rouen. That's where it was. And I came to Rouen. I also established a Hebrew religious school teaching the prayers, and had good rapport and response from the town. From Rouen, I went to Le Havre, and Le Havre, this was